Let's solve the polynomial inequalities graphically. Up first, f of x is greater than 0. Another way of thinking about this is asking where is the function or the graph above the x-axis? Where is it above 0? And that's going to be in this first region here. And our answer is going to be in terms of domain, so x values, -4 to -1. We'll use parentheses due to the strict inequality, the greater than 0. We don't want to include those x-intercepts. The graph is also above the x-axis here, from 3 to positive infinity. So we'll do union, parenthesis 3 to infinity. Notice in example B, it's very similar to A. This time, f of x is greater than or equal to 0. So we're asking where is the function above the x-axis or on the x-axis. So it's very subtle. The only difference is we can now include those x-intercepts. So we'll bracket the -4, bracket the -1, bracket the 3, infinity stays a parenthesis. In example C, we have f less than 0. In other words, where is the graph below the x-axis? That's on this first piece here. Again, your answer is in terms of domain or x values. So that is from -infinity up to -4, parenthesis. Again, parenthesis on the -4 because we're looking at a strict less than. We'll union that with the other interval, which is from -1 to 3. That region is also below the x-axis. -1 up to 3, parenthesis. D is very similar to C. It's subtle. Be careful when looking at questions like this. This time we're asking where is the function below or equal to the x-axis. So we can now include x-intercepts. -infinity up to -4, we'll bracket the -4, union, bracket the -1, up to 3, and bracket the 3. In our next example, part A is asking where is f greater than 0? In other words, where is the graph above the x-axis? That's occurring in this piece. That is from -infinity up to -2. Remember, your answer is in terms of domain or in terms of the x values. And then we're also above the x-axis in this interval, and that is from 0 to 1. Notice that we are using parentheses because of the strict inequality. We're not including those x-intercepts. Whereas in example B, we have a very similar question, but now we can ask where is it greater than or equal to 0? In other words, where is it above the x-axis or on the x-axis? We can now include those x-intercepts. So -infinity to -2, bracket, union, bracket 0, 1, bracket. In example C, we're asking where is f less than 0? In other words, where is it below the x-axis? That's in this first interval from -2 to 0. Also, this second piece from 1 to infinity. Again, we'll use parentheses since it's a strictly less than. In example D, we have less than or equal to, meaning we can now include those x-intercepts. We'll bracket the -2, bracket the 0, bracket the 1, and infinity stays a parenthesis. Up next, we're looking at a rational inequality this time. Where is f greater than 0? In other words, where is it above the x-axis? This piece is above the x-axis. Again, your answer is in terms of domain or x values. So we go from negative infinity up to negative 1, that asymptote. And then above the x-axis in this piece, that interval is from 0 to the asymptote 1. In example B, we're asking a very similar question. Where is f greater than or equal to 0? This time we can include x-intercepts. Note that you cannot include vertical asymptotes, only the x-intercepts. So this time we have negative infinity up to negative 1. We cannot include the negative 1 with a bracket. We have to leave it as a parenthesis because it's an asymptote. Then we'll union. The 0 we can include. It is an x-intercept. Up to 1 and parenthesis on the 1 because we never reach the 1. It's an asymptote. In example C, f of x is less than 0. In other words, where is f below the x-axis? This first piece is below the x-axis, and that is starting at the asymptote negative 1 and going up to 0. We'll use parentheses on both of those due to the strict inequality. And it is also below the x-axis in this piece, starting at 1 and going to positive infinity. In example D, very similar question. Where is f less than or equal to 0? This time we can include those x-intercepts. Again, we cannot include asymptotes. So we have parenthesis negative 1 up to 0. 0 gets a bracket because it's an intercept. Then we'll union that with parenthesis 1 to infinity. Here we have another rational inequality. Up first, when is f greater than 0? When is f above the x-axis? That's in this region. From negative infinity up to the asymptote of negative 1. It is also above the x-axis here. That's from negative 1 up to 1. And again, from 3 to positive infinity. Example B, very similar to A. This time we can include x-intercepts because we have equality. Make note, you cannot include your vertical asymptotes. So we have negative infinity up to negative 1. We don't include it. Union negative 1 up to 1. This time we can include the 1 because it's an x-intercept. Then we'll union that with 3 bracket up to positive infinity. In part C, we're asking where is f less than 0? Where is it below the x-axis? In this first piece, starting at 1 up to 2. And again, from 2 up to 3. D, very similar to C. This time we can include x-intercepts. We'll bracket the 1, go up to 2, but not include the 2. It's an asymptote. Union, parenthesis 2, and bracket the 3.